It's on for me.
This thing.
Oh, there we go.
I've got you now, Dan, go.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Can you cut it up a bit more?
The top of the teeth of the tongue. Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather. Is that coming out? Or no?
Very quietly.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. As usual, typical Noob Spearo audio difficulties. If you've listened to the podcast, you understand. So we're going to have a bit of a cook-up tonight. Dan and I have got some mystery ceviche.
Some mystery bits for raw fish, yes.
And then we've got
Some mystery
something else.
flaps, belly flaps.
Mystery flaps.
Mystery belly flaps.
Mystery flaps. That'll be the title of this episode. Mystery flaps. And sausages.
And attempting to reverse butterfly a fish without cocking it up.
And that's Josh Newland. You
Newland, yeah, I just saw it in his book. And I was
No,
like,
you said you were going to do exactly like Josh Newland.
he doesn't look like a little small fish. Well, this one's small anyway. We'll give it a go. It's
Cool.
it's good.
I think we'll have a few brews. Make sure you're drinking because I get funnier. And let's cook up a storm.
All right.
I think admin's covered. Adreno's open next door for all your spearfishing needs. There's Jeremy, he'll help you.
Up to 8 o'clock.
Open till all hours, all night.
All hours.
Still the door's shut. Well, firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for everyone coming out to giving up your Thursday night to come and see me put something together that might be tasty or might not be tasty.
So we're going to get Dan cooking. He's going to start cutting stuff up. We're going to have a massive Q&A section. Thank you everyone for coming and saying hello. It's awesome to host Dan. He's got a huge YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe already, check that out on YouTube. I think he's got like 55 subscribers or something. Massive.
Something like that. So the first thing I'm going to do, ironically, is not actually cooking anything. Something I've just picked up over the last little while, fallen in and out of love with over my time is a raw fish. I used to get right into Spanish poke bowls until one day I filtered a Spanish mackerel at a Tweed boat ramp. And if you've ever been to a Tweed boat ramp when it's busy, you'll realise that the filter table is full of bacteria and crap, and I cut it all up and didn't do a lot of food hygiene and was a little upset in the guts over the next couple of days. So I got turned off raw fish for a long time, but doing a bit of travel this year reignited my love for doing some raw fish, and so I was going to do
What's the go with this food hygiene thing? You've changed since you moved to the UK, Dan.
I'm just a bit fussy on food hygiene. Like if I cook chicken on a chopping board, I don't use that chopping board for the rest of the night. I use a different knife. I'm just a bit, just better to be safe than sorry.
Everyone's grateful that you're cooking and not me then.
Yeah, fair enough. So the other thing that's good about raw fish that I like is it doesn't necessarily have to be a quality fish that we're traditionally used to, of saying, we off Brisbane here most of the time it's mangrove jack, parrotfish, tuskfish, Spanish mackerel, that sort of stuff, and you don't, you tend to shy away from things like even mullet. Like nobody shoots mullet here, but I've had some fantastic raw mullet in my time. Even things like barracuda. I had some amazing barracuda raw a couple of months ago in Greece. It's a really tasty fish, and just because a fish isn't good for certain applications like pan frying or doing something like that, it doesn't mean it's not good for other things. Which is one of the big points of the Noob Spearo 99 Spearfishing Recipes cookbook.
It's a great pump, and if I was organised, I would have 50 copies here for all of you guys to buy, but they're still being printed. So thanks, Daniel, for your meaningless promotion. 99 Spearo Recipes, it'll be available everywhere in Adreno stores. I'm hoping early November. Dan submitted, I think, 5 recipes. And
they're mostly rip-offs of somebody else's recipe.
But they're very good anyway. And you are now live.
We are live.
I'm now live with Daniel Mann. We're in the Adreno mechanic shop next door to the shop in Woolloongabba, Brisbane. And we're going to do some live cooking.
Yes.
Daniel's about to chop up some mystery fish for ceviche. No, sashimi.
carpaccio.
Carpaccio, okay.
It depends where it's from, but we'll call it ceviche carpaccio type thing. It'll have lemon on it, so
Okay.
yeah.
So if you guys do want to have your phones out, you're more than welcome to, because I'll have an overhead shot, so it'll be on the Noob Spearo live. That way you can sort of see this angle as well. We're trying a new tech thing here.
Definitely. So this is two fish, just to maybe illustrate that fish that you don't traditionally shoot for fish and chips or baking or something like that. Can be used for other things. So one of the best actual carpaccios that I've had recently is lionfish, those fluffy things with the poisonous spines.
Invasives.
Yeah, they're invasive in the eastern Mediterranean, so if you go diving, you have to go diving with scissors, so you shoot them in the head and cut the spines off and so you don't get done. They make great carpaccio. So, very simple, I don't get too technical on it, I just cut reasonably thin bits because I don't like chewing through a lot of big bits. And so,
I like this too because you can do it on the boat. So for those that
I
are
did this in New
impatient,
Zealand, yeah, totally. Yeah. I think it's better if you leave it for a while.
yeah, it is. It's better if it sort of sets and the rigor starts to set in. But even if you have it on ice for an hour or two, you can have really good sashimi at the boat ramp.
Definitely.
A bit of soy sauce helps. That's pretty much all you need, other than a sharp knife.
Yeah. If you want to make it super pretty, you can cut it into pieces and lay it in a fashion that looks like a flower or something like that.
You brought for some flowers too. We've got edibles over
I've
here.
got edibles of the flower variety.
A lot of the UK variety because of all the bloom over there.
Yeah, edibles are ubiquitous now. It's really easy to get hold of. But anyway, that's here then. So I normally just chop up a bit, and if you want to make it super presentable on a plate, you can lay it out any way you want. But
Are we going to share this with people?
yeah, I mean anyone's welcome to.
Were we going to do a mystery taste test? People had to guess what species it was.
Well, yeah. One of them I didn't shoot, so that's a clue about what it could be if anyone follows me on Instagram and shot some fish over the last couple of weeks. But
Sashimi for a lot of people, any of these raw dishes is quite intimidating, I think.
totally.
For people that have been around for a while, and that's what we're going to see for getting more nice, that's a big deal. But for people that have never tried raw fish, speak to them. How do you reassure them that it's not going to kill them or hurt them or
I think
give them monkeypox?
one of the best things about being a spearfish is you get your own fresh fish and you can treat it how you want. So as long as you shoot a fish, put it on ice, and be quite clean in your prep, I don't think you've got really anything to worry about. If you start cutting it up on a brick or the concrete of the boat ramp or an old filleting table, you might have some problems, but everything's generally pretty clean. So yeah, just give it a go. I mean, try everything once. I was very skeptical when a friend of mine started chopping up a mullet for a carpaccio. I was like, "What are you doing?"
It's not traditionally like a sashimi food either because it's
Italians love it.
Yeah, right.
But it's not. Maybe they're slightly different there, but they're quite white meat, and they'll take the one side of one side of the fillet for carpaccio, just with some bits that I'll do, and the other side for risotto. Made a stock out of the frame and all that, and it was pretty tip top.
Where does the nickname Spanner come from?
I think I used to get called nana arms because I had small arms. Believe it or not, when I got married 9 years ago, I was 10 kilos lighter than I am now.
Okay.
Which is not a lot.
Wow.
So yeah, I had arms like a chicken.
So you bulked up?
Yeah, well, this is bulking, sure. And I think Bryson just said that guy's a bit of a tool, so he said spanner instead of nana arms.
Spanner.
And that's where it comes from.
I
guess.
Very clever.
So anyway, that's enough on this plate for two different bits.
Have we got chopsticks? How are we serving up this mystery sashimi? What are we serving it with too? What have we got here?
So this is essentially what I start with, just a nice plate of chopped bits. You can chop this as rough as you want. I mean, you can, if you want small pieces, like when you're cutting up lionfish, they tend to be quite small, so you can get just chunks, however you like the texture, but that's just the easiest way I've cut that up there. So what I normally do from here, the usual sort of stuff, if it grows together, it goes together. Fish live in salt water generally, so salt. I always put a bit of salt on there just to season it with that. Then pepper, just pepper slaps.
I noticed you upped the normal Aldi.
I just got this out of my brother's kitchen on the way here because I didn't want to buy it myself.
Your brother's got a bit of grocery budget than you do.
Definitely. He has a job, that's a big thing. But yeah, jobs are overrated. I don't know how anyone has time for a job.
You just have a YouTube channel.
So I like, that is an off-camera conversation. I like to use a little bit of spring onion, shallots, echelons, whatever you want to call it, just these things.
What is the deal with that? Like, you didn't notice with the cookbook, like, they're a massive sort of vocabulary issue. They call them like scallions or something, right?
Scallions or something like that,
Yeah.
I think when people say echelons or scallions, they normally refer to a football ovular type onion that's...
The bulb with the bulb.
Yeah, it's red though, like it's a red, sort of like a green, what you'd see a red onion is, and that sort of stuff. So they're just a bit milder, maybe a bit sweeter, high sugar content. But anyway, I just like to get this stuff and go quite fine because I don't want to have big chunks of this.
Look at that knife game.
Oh, jeez.
How come you haven't used any of the Noob Spearo knives, Stan?
Because they are more for processing fish with the shape versus this one, which is more of a cooking knife.
Good excuse.
But the Noob Spearo knives do look very nice. I've seen the 6-inch boner in there.
6-inch boner.
It's an intimidating knife.
With the mystery flaps and the sausages, numerous sausages tonight. Where are we going with this?
Well, just the shape on it is really nice. That's my preference of a knife. Shape, 6-inch boning knife, it's got a curve on it, it's got a point on it so you can get out fish skin and that sort of stuff. My own personal one. I had to buy a red one because I had a black one. It was forbidden for Tim McDonald to touch my red knife because he would always just cut it on stainless steel. But that's the knife I use and it's virtually identical in shape. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that one that you've got in the kit.
New Zealand factory knives. Just talk about that longer knife for a sec. Why do you like it as opposed to like the other knife that we were talking about?
I like
the Jarvis Walker fishing.
Yeah. So if anyone remembers Rex Hunt, surely they were on all those fishing shows. They would always use super flexible knives you could bend in half. And I went out and bought one like most people, and I put it back in the drawer shortly after because
too much flex.
Too much flex for me. I mean, some people are great with them, but for any of the fish around here in Brisbane and Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, generally they're over a kilo or two.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to be doing these ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a nice one. I would probably use that for skinning just because of its length, just to get take the skin off a fillet, which would be good. I have a big, I think they're called a salmon knife. I have a round end on them that I use for skinning, so you can skin a.
Are you any good at skinning?
Yeah. Well, I can skin a fillet. Yeah.
Some days I go alright, and some days I'm just woeful. Very inconsistent.
Depends on the fish as well. Some fish with big scales are really easy to skin because they tend to be a lot more tough instead of a fish, say like a Spanish mackerel. A Spanish mackerel is an absolute dog to fillet. So most of the, not fillet, sorry, they're great to fillet, but skinning them is another thing entirely. So some really fine shallots, spring onions, whatever you want to call them. I just sort of sprinkle them evenly over the top, so they add a bit of flavour, a bit of crunch, bit of that over the top. Nothing.
Were you going to add oil or are we just?
Oh, big time.
Okay.
Oh, I've got a lot to it. Did you bring me the grater that I requested?
No.
Okay. We will not have lemon zest. So.
You could chop it up really finely with one of those awesome Noob Spearo knives.
I could probably do that. Because I am slightly older, I like to put chili on things because that's what happens when you reach about 25. You start liking pepper, mushrooms, capers, olives, all this sort of stuff that you turn your nose up at when you're 18. Start actually liking beer.
That'll be some of the young fellas in the audience, I reckon.
So I like to put a few chili flakes on. Obviously, if you don't like chili, don't put chili flakes on. But it just adds a little bit of something onto it. So this is probably what I would serve somebody that's a bit cautious about raw fish. You don't want to just go, here, have a slab, take a bite sort of thing. If you add a few flavours into it, it's generally pretty nice. I will add the lime juice first. Just because if you put oil on it first, oil is a water repellent, so the lime juice doesn't get in first. So if you're using a lemon or lime doesn't really matter, I just like limes because they don't have seeds in them generally in this country, so you can just squeeze those over. But if you've got a lemon, if you hold it that way, you don't get seeds all through it.
Hey!
Yeah, Saw
Some
it,
tricks in it.
saw it on a chef once. I was filming.
I always get, like it goes everywhere, including my eye and all that.
And
What-
hold that.
Why are you good at presentation when I've found most Spearos are not?
Because I have a wife who's an interior designer and always wants to see me make things look better than they do. So, yeah, I don't know if it's great presentation. I mean, it's getting there, but
Yeah, that's good.
so
Solid.
after that, decent olive oil. If you get extra virgin olive oil, it actually tastes good. And if you can find one that says extracted solely by mechanical means, that means you know it's not being boiled with water to filter out the oils and actually has a taste to it. This one's at first cold press, so it might be alright.
I was listening to a guy on Joe Rogan the other day. He was talking about all the different oils, and half of them get bleached and all sorts of oils.
Totally, yeah.
Sounds like olive oil is kind of like one of the picks of the bunch.
I did a olive oil tasting. You know when you do like wine tasting, but I did one for olive oil. It's very, very intimidating. Because the person I did it with was very, she was very passionate about olive oil and the health benefits and all that sort of stuff. But you know, you taste sort of corn oil or sesame oil next to it, just doesn't have any flavour to it.
So while that's curing, are we going to
Well
go
done,
for some?
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Also, oregano.
I'd be done. So I would already be eating it.
It's all about layers, Shrek, and like onions and Shrek and layers. See the reference? No?
It's good. Really good, Dan.
So
I can see why you got all 55 of those subscribers.
big time. If it grows, like I keep saying it, I had a Greek mate say it before. He said all the good stuff in life that goes together: olives, olive oil, seafood. It all grows by the sea, Greece, and so it all tastes really good together. So this is just some fresh oregano. Generally, you have to grow it yourself to oregano, whatever you want to call it. I just give it a fine chop because the leaves on this one are pretty hectic.
They look real healthy over there. Are they like right into permaculture and growing all the stuff and
I think
without pesticides and
definitely use pesticides and that sort of stuff, but I think it's because the fishing over there's such a scarcity of fish that you have to use everything you can, and then you get a bit more creative when you don't have a lot. Like all these dishes like matriciana, it's just a pasta dish. It's very famous. It's just tomatoes, garlic, chili, oil and pasta. And it's just because that's all they can grow where they are in that village, and they make the best that they can. So when you don't have a lot of stuff, you tend to make it really nice. So I just sprinkle some oregano leaves over the top, and that's kind of, you can leave it at that, but I've raided my dad's garden just to make it a little prettier. These are dianthus. So the petals are edible, so it just adds a little bit of colour on there. You know, if you're presenting this for someone, you go, oh, this looks really nice. They're probably going to froth over a bit of leaves and that sort of stuff.
Josh Nealon eat your heart out, you reckon?
Yeah, they just throw a little bit for colour and that sort of stuff.
If anyone hasn't got Josh Nealon's books too, by the way, absolute game changers for seafood.
Is it Nealon or Nyland?
I always said Nyland, and now I think everyone says Nealon, so I just kind of adopted that. But I butcher half the stuff I say, so everyone just sort of goes, well.
There's something you said funny the other day that I really laughed at. I forgot what it was. Yeah,
Tomato.
What was it? Oh no, it was on the latest episode when Chris Coates said there's a Karen instead of a Karen.
Oh,
these things.
yeah.
There's a Karen on my channel. Some Karen.
Yeah.
I was like, it's definitely Karen. Anyway, that's the only other thing I'd probably do on that is just shave. If you had a grater, you can just get some of the zest off.
You didn't ask me for a grater.
I totally did a left voicemail on.
Who listens to voicemails?
Apparently not you. Anyway, if you chop it up super fine, it might work. But yeah, grating some citrus zest on there is generally.
Just want everyone to see how poorly that looks.
That was terrible, so we probably won't put that on there. But anyway, that's if you sit that in the fridge for maybe half an hour, that will be ready to eat. It's best when it's cold. You can already see that some of the fish is starting to go white. That's the
Curing?
The curing process. So it's not strictly raw because it's cured a little bit, but it just makes it a little less offensive for people that aren't used to raw fish. So
Looks good.
do we have a fridge?
We've got your rescue code.
Something fit in there. There's an esky at the back there.
Oh, yeah, you got this in that.
So the other thing, big on after travelling to places that don't have a lot of fish is trying to use as much of it as possible. I get nightmares when I think about all the fish wings and other parts of fish that I've thrown out over the years living in Brisbane, because you just have such an abundance of fish. It's really easy just to take the fillets off, get lazy and throw the rest out. I distinctly remember throwing out a frame of a 10-kilo red emperor that I didn't eat the wings on, which is just pretty naughty. So I brought along a set of wings and belly flap off a fish that I shot.
I'm just going to put this down for 2 and have a little fun.
Last week or the week before, just to sort of illustrate how much meat you are sort of missing out on if you don't take this part of the fish. Yeah, where's that first tiger?
Sorry.
Because that's another thing that we're big on in the Noob Spearo cookbook, is using parts of the fish that aren't always utilised by people. It's got a little bit of grass on it still, but anyway, that's all right. So this is a fish wing or fish throat collar. They like to call them collars. It's a very popular name for them. I actually saw kingfish collars on a menu in Brisbane on the weekend.
Which restaurant?
Yoka
Oh, yeah.
at Howard Smith Wharves.
Okay.
It was alright.
Okay.
It wasn't amazing.
I
But
think we're getting better with sustainable seafood. As Spearo, sometimes, as you were mentioning, because we've got such an abundance of a resource, we can sometimes use less of it than we possibly should.
absolutely.
Because it requires a bit of extra effort.
I mean, like this doesn't require too much effort at all, but that is the wings, so you can sort of see that's that part of the fish. There, that normally gets thrown out. I've probably thrown out over 100 of these in my life.
So this mystery fish,
Does anyone want to take a guess?
I want to take a guess what species it is. Heard jewfish? Any more guesses?
Any other guesses? Not a jewfish.
Not a jewfish?
Latest
Cliffy?
Lobberwebs. Latest Calcarifer.
Nah, he
Anyone?
shot it on me, right?
Anyone? Barramundi. Yeah, spot on. So this is the belly flap of a 13.5 kilo barramundi. And yeah, it's a lot of meat that you generally throw out. I mean, it's got a bit of weight to it if you had a spare hand to pick it up.
Yeah. So what's the plan with this?
So I keep this sort of stuff simple when it's a fish like this with big scales. The scales tend to protect if we put it on a barbecue. So we've got these fish rubs here. I've never used them, but I heard they are pretty spot on.
It's Honky Outdoors.
Honky Outdoors, Ben Honky. I've never actually got to use his
So
stuff before.
it's a salt bay, it's just a rub. You can
Yeah.
pretty much use it if you're smoking fish, if you're barbecuing.
He sent me some, but I never. Also, if you don't have a barbecue like me and you live in a flat, you can do this in the oven very easily. You don't necessarily need a barbecue. It's just what we have. We don't have an oven. So barbecue is a great option because you can get all that good smoky goodness and all that sort of stuff. But if you do just have an oven or you don't want to fire up a barbecue, etc., you can totally use an oven just the same. If you put olive oil on the top, it will crisp up. Or if you've got very small wings, such as what I shoot on sea bass and stuff like that are this big, you can just dust them in flour and deep fry them. And yeah, they come out like a KFF, Kentucky Fried Fish.
One of the recipes in the book was from Sam Clodier, the wet mammal.
Yes.
And he freezes up all his wings from different species. So on football nights, he just pulls out all the wings, dusts them, does them all. So you might be having, 5 different species on one plate.
Not
It's
the
great.
UK, isn't he? Three things to shoot.
But he's been Fiji, Sydney.
Sure.
So yeah.
Has anyone not tried these? Does anyone do this on the regular? Does anyone tailor wings? A lot of blank. Got one person, couple of people.
Who's like me and doesn't actually go spearfishing, just talks about spearfishing. A couple of other big things to do.
Anyway, if you don't get out spearfishing a lot and you sort of revert on your skills, as you've mentioned before, when you have long regress, when you have a regression of skills and you may only shoot in southeast Queensland 4 fish for the day, a terrible day out here. You can take the wings and use more of the fish, so you don't have to worry about not having just fillets in the freezer. You can feed your family on this. well, more than I found on this one.
And they take up flavour pretty well.
Definitely. I think any meat on a bone is always good. I think whole fish, when you cook it, tends to taste a little bit different because it's got the flavour of all the marrow and other bits and pieces going through the fish. So yeah, I think this thing will taste good.
Alright, so we've got a bit of a spice rub here from Honky Outdoors.
I've been wanting to try these for a while.
Yeah.
I just haven't shot anything when I've had these in my possession, so thank you, Ben, for sending these to me.
Yeah, it's the Salt Bay mix for reference, so you can buy that on honkyoutdoors.com.au, I think it is.
Good with that one.
Yeah.
Would you like to do this and I'll hold the phone?
Okay. Do you want to hold the mic too? You've got the Tony Robbins thing, I don't have that. The Tony Robbins is finished and done with that.
Didn't know about that. Is that the recommended amount of spice rub?
I believe the expression is the more the merrier.
More the merrier, definitely. Make sure you get all these edges of the flaps. You don't want to just go in the middle of the flap.
It's nothing like Shrek's fingers in the fish. That's all I can say. So we're going to start cooking this on the top side or bottom side?
I think so on the top side, just to try and get a little bit of crispy on this side. What I find on barbecue plates, inevitably fish is quite flaky and it falls apart and you end up having a horrible time. So I always like to leave the scales on if I'm going to do it on a barbecue, because it doesn't matter too much if the scales get burnt or left on there and they come away a little bit easier. You can eat the skin on the barramundi like this, but it's pretty thick and leathery, not my favourite sort of skin to eat on a fish. But for smaller fish, as we'll do in a little bit, you can most certainly eat the skin. So I'll probably actually get it on the meaty part of the fish.
Look at you correcting my work.
I'm just adding to the
fingers soup.
Down that bit there, and it's a bit weird.
Alright, so are we going to run down the side before we put it on the barbie?
There's not really a lot of point rubbing on scales
Yeah.
because the flavour doesn't really go through in my experience. So
Unless you use something like this, and then you can get
the
one
new.
of those.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this instrument?
So it's a revolutionary scaler. You've got large on one side, fine on the other, and you just deal with your fish. Make sure you do it somewhere where your wife's not going to bash you if there's scales left all over the ground and everywhere else. Have you ever seen Trevor's video where he uses the gurney?
What is Trevor?
Trevor uses a gurney to scale a fish. It's class act, but he does it down the side of his shoe.
I try and avoid putting fresh water on fish that I'm going to eat. I think it's osmosis that destroys the scales from a salty animal to a fresh animal.
And where the scales sort of, like, it's almost like feathers on a bird. Like there's like a
where they sit in the divot. The divot.
Yeah, and if that holds moisture, that's where you get bacteria and all the other nasty stuff.
I was going to try and do the knife scaling method, but
Right.
I'm not going to do that. Just
Okay, so we're just going to barbie it?
I think so. Yeah. So everyone knows how to use a barbecue.
Yeah.
Oil, etc. You're not supposed to heat olive oil too hot, but no one else.
It hasn't got a super high smoke point, has it?
It doesn't have a super high smoke point, and you kill all the antioxidants in it when you reach it above about 40 degrees allegedly. If you are doing something with oil on a plate, I recommend folding away from you so you don't splash yourself, because if you put that end down and go splash it this way, you get hot oil coming in your face. But if you put it down this way,
Oh, look at that.
when it splashes that way. If it does splash at all, but that's just something to be aware of. If you're doing it in a fry pan with small wings, just place it away from you so you don't get burning hot oil all over you. Or just get one of these Noob Spearo aprons and you don't have to worry about that either.
Catch and Cook Ceviche certified. They'll be available on noobspearo.com. Only $105 each or something. No, I think they're about, I can't remember off the top of my head.
So that's that one cooking away. I'm a big fan of the hood on the barbecue just to keep the heat in, so it sort of cooks from both sides. The scales will probably pop up a bit.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. We might flip it, we might not. We'll see how it's sticking. But that can just...
So while that is cooking, did you want to start the butterfly fish?
Yes. So another thing that I've learned about shooting small fish, and not many of them, is it's good to use as much as you can, because this is a... see, for Australia, this is quite a small fish. This is a grassy, and I assure you it is of legal size. It is 35 centimetres. They have to be 30 centimetres. It probably was.
Quite tough to hunt at times.
This wasn't one of those instances when it was a tough one to hunt.
I was hoping for a real epic story there.
Well, I sat on a plane wreck and it swam up over the top at me and turned that way and said, "Bring me to Adreno," and so I did. So yeah, anyways, not great for fillets, but anyway, small fish. If you just take the fillets off this, you might feed yourself just once. You know, if you're growing lad or growing woman or growing whatever. If you've got an
I'm
appetite,
looking at me while you're saying that. That's quite.
I think you look the best shape I've seen you in a long time.
It's because of the apron. It's slimming.
Basically, if you take the fillets off this, you're not going to get a whole lot of a meal, but if you do this for 2 people by butterflying it out and you're using the wings and the head and all that other stuff, you tend to get a lot more meat off it, and it's just a good way to not have to shoot so many fish if your skills have progressed, or you just don't want to shoot something, or just want to eat a really tasty fish. So this one I've scaled just with a similar scaling device to this, and I've also gutted it.
Can you just
So the idea behind this, if you've filtered a fish before, you know the general anatomy of a fish that has a backbone, it has spines that go upwards, goes downwards, goes to the dorsal rays, and this is essentially trying to remove the spine while keeping the fish intact, so you can open it up and flatten it out like a big fat toad. Generally, they kind of come out looking like a toad.
They look completely different.
They look completely different, but one thing that is easier to do this method is scissors.
Can you just lay out all the tools you're going to use?
I will use. So I'm going to go fully deboned. So you will need fish tweezers or some really clean tweezers that you use for your eyebrows or other parts of your body, and or some long nose pliers that are very clean. Just to get the pin bones out, so you can have a completely bone-free experience. So the first thing I do generally is
and then scissors.
Scissors for cutting through the pin bones to get the spine out. You can cut through it with a knife, but scissors generally.
Yep.
Is
that pretty much it?
And a knife.
Oh.
And a Victory 6-inch boning knife made in New Zealand, non-stained, the 909-7485.
Catch and Cook.
That one. So, take the tools and those.
I think sometimes when I'm about to do something for the first time, I just like a really logical picture of like, okay, what do I need? Lay it all out, then I'm like, okay, cool. Got my head around it.
Cutting the spines off generally just helps it lay a bit flatter when you're done. So, might be a bit hard to see, but we're going to fillet down either side of the spine in kind of upside down fashion. So, you go down this side of the anal spines down to the tail.
If you're not already, just log on to Instagram and check out the Noob Spearo live, and you can watch some of this footage up close. It's probably shaky and not even pointed at the right target, but that's what you get with a B grade camera.
So just to show, you can see here, going down either side of that, that's the spine there. There's spikes of the spine, the vertebrae, that go down to the anal spikes there, and there's the spine you can see there. So I'm just taking that all the way to the top of the fish, without trying to go all the way through it. Otherwise,
It's a decent job, Dan.
thank you. I have been packing it about this when I decided to do this little demonstration the entire time. So then once you get down to the tail, if you've never done much with cutting through spines, it's way easier just to stick your knife through the vertebrae joint. Does anyone know what the correct term is? Vertebrae joint. The joint where it's mushy comes through easier.
Is this one of those living in the UK things where you start to take on your accent but it hasn't fully made the crossover yet, and so some words you're unsure how to pronounce?
I thought vertebra and vertebrae was a singular and plural. That's what I was getting at.
Probably.
So just cutting through there, or if it's a small fish. Like
If you're South African, it's vertebrae.
Steroid jokes come in. Or you can use scissors just to cut through the spine there, like that. So then take it up to, this is where the rib cage is, this is where it can get a little trickier. If you have a bigger fish, scissors are easier, but with a small fish you can generally cut through the ribs. But I'm just going to play it safe and do it with scissors, so I don't completely balls it up. So you just go through the ribs, snipping them off, like that. The other side.
So those scissors, are they like chef scissors or like?
They're just like kitchen scissors I stole from my brother's house.
Okay. They seem a bit more robust than your.
Yeah, I guess they're kitchen scissors. Thank you, Jesse, for lending me your stuff at your house down the road, lastminute.com.
It's no good relying on Shrek to bring stuff.
No, you can bring a great into that ceviche, it's not going to be really good. Okay, so now we're down to here, and you can sort of see it taking shape a little bit. You've still got the ribs in here, which we've cut through, that are attached at the spine here. So now the next step is to find your last vertebrae joint before the head, cut through that, and then try and remove the spine, and I get the scissors and cut it out that way. So
we're filleting it sort of upside down, each side, alongside, keeping it flush. Then we're scissoring through the rib cage, and now we are about to saw through the head.
Not quite sawing over the head yet, but we're getting down into the nitty gritty here. And also, very nice eating fish, the grassy ambro. As you can see, the meat is nice and white. Apart from where I shot it through the middle when I was looking at it, but other than that, it's nice and white and good.
Sometimes when you go to a seafood buffet, I've seen this stuff.
Is this on fire? No, we're good? Cool. So, I tend to start from the back and work my way up. So you're just cutting through a few little, so you do need scissors for this. I tell everyone you do need scissors, but you're sort of cutting through to the top where the dorsal spine is, just up the back here. That's why I cut those spines off, because it makes it a bit easier for the fish to lie flat. They're very thin up here, so this is probably the only bone that should be left in the entire process.
I thought we were going to get a Brisbane burnout there for a bit of background ambience.
There we go. So that's essentially what you're trying to cut out there. If you want, you can throw it on the barbecue and eat that. You may as well do that, just because there's a little bit of meat on there, but generally, smaller fish that you're doing this with, there's not too much meat on there. So if you're really picky, you can barbecue that.
Soup or stock?
Stock, do whatever you want, yeah. But most of the travel barbecue is there. See what that tastes like? Okay, so that is kind of where we're at. Now this is the part that generally scares me, because I always think I'm going to cut my hand off. Trying to split the head in half. So that's where we're at the moment. The only bones that are there are the pin bones there and the rib bones on either side. Now, just to get this nice and flat, I will split the lower jaw, and then this is the hardest part. So the spine that connects to the back of the head is kind of where you want to split it in half, because that's always in the center. So yeah, I try and get in here, and then without cutting through my fingers. And then split it down that way, and then there we go. That's from that bit. There's a vertebra stuck on the knife blade because they're tough. And then you can just kind of fold the fish's head out flat once you get through the little cut here. Lay it out flat, and there's the brain, so you can wipe the brains out. As you can see, it kind of looks like a toad or something really ugly. But
it's like a jobby.
Yeah, a little small jobby. Not that I shot jobfish, that's small too. Yeah, it does look a little bit like a jobby, but I tend to wipe the brains out. Some people are into that. You can leave it in there if you want. Now, you can definitely cook it like that. But if you want to lay flat, just put a little cut in the tail, flat there. So it all lays flat. The best way I found to do this is in an oven, because otherwise it sticks to everything else. I would just lay that on top of the oven tray with the, not tray, the grilling, what's that called?
Grill tray? Yeah, like the...
Just the shelf, just the shelf with the wire bits. And if you lay it, you just put some olive oil on that side, lay it down this side, and then put olive oil on this side. The skin will crisp up, it will blister, looks like bunions, but they're very tasty looking bunions. And that's generally it. But to take one step further, taking out the ribs, the pin bones at the ribs. So if you're kind of familiar with filleting a fish, you'll realise that the pin bones are going to be here. You can feel for them wherever they are. They're near the ribs, so you can just grab a rib, and start at the back, and then pull it out.
This bit can be a little bit tedious, but
It's just, you know,
Like,
You feel-
especially if you're feeding young kids, you don't want bones and stuff in them.
totally. So you can get the rib bones out here with these. Helps to put your fingers on the front of the rib just to try and steady it to get the angle right, and then you can get a grip. So they do get kind of big, so you don't want to eat those. Generally speaking,
They are kind of weird, like, it's like the sinew holds them until you get that angle exactly right.
it's like the bones are actually there to hold the fish together in its body for it not to fall apart or something like that. It's like they're there for a purpose other than us eating it.
Talking of fish biography, biology though, their composition is a bit different. Like even the way their muscles are laid out. Like I guess it's moved differently through the water, but it can be interesting to geek out with marine biologists about this stuff.
Definitely the barramundi is quite a bit different when it comes to taking the fillets off, and they only have 1 or 2 pin bones generally when you take a fillet out. Because normally the traditional thing where you have a fillet and you go on that lateral line and you cut a big wedge out. Barramundi fillet's got 1 or 2 there depending on how good a job you've done. So you generally get a massive big slab of them, which is good.
What do you go to recipes with barra?
I'm a big barra burger fan. It's a bit basic. It's a bit naff, but I just
Do you mince it up? Or?
no. I just take a slab of barramundi. Generally as thick as the shoulder because I just like a big slab because you're never going to get that anywhere else. And panko crumbs, brioche bun, cheese, alfalfa sprouts, kewpie mayo, lime, and avocado.
One thing I love about your YouTube channel is that you have learned a whole lot of different ways to cook. Because I think, speaking for myself, like you tend to get 2 or 3 go-to recipes and just say them over and over and over.
Yeah.
So it's good to get out of your comfort zone and try something a little bit different.
It makes spearfishing a little bit more exciting when you see something that's not normally what you're shooting. I'm going to shoot that. So I was in Bundaberg last week and I dived on some artificial wrecks out there and I saw some silver trevally about 1 kilogram, and that's the first thing I wanted to shoot just because I know how good they make sashimi. A little 1 kilogram silver trevally, normally something that's nobody cares about in this part of the world. Everyone gets what you shoot that for, but if you're not worried about shooting a big fish or anything like that and you're just looking for purely food, I mean they're fantastic, they're everywhere, not many people seem to target them, so it's a good fish to go for. I probably wouldn't recommend lionfish though. Bubble blowers here are probably a bit protective of lionfish.
They look pretty good on the water.
Once you've taken the ribs out, you can then feel the pin bone, so you can, I don't know if you can see that, but that's what it looks like without the ribs. It's very sort of flaccid. And yeah,
Flaccid.
is that the correct word?
You go through all the good adjectives here.
And then you can nip out the pin bones if you can get a good grip on them and find them. So it is a bit fiddly, but yeah, they're the kind of little pin bones that you're trying to get out. That's going to totally get lodged in the toddler's throat, so you really want to make sure you get it all out. Then again, I get super scared when I feed my nieces and nephews fish, whole fish. I tend to just go for big fillets for them.
What's your go-to with feeding fish to kids? Do you just do a classic sort of fish taco?
You can do whatever you want as long as there's tomato sauce on hand, generally with kids, from my experience. But actually my nephew's alright with that. He, the one in New Zealand, he eats lots of different things, so you can feed him anything, and he'll eat it. I think a crispy skin one's quite nice, but I didn't go diving today to get the fish with the crispy skin.
Should we flip that barra?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? Let's flip it. So we'll see how that's going. Trevor, do you have gazunder?
I didn't bring one either.
Okay.
Yeah, borrow
That
this.
goes under. Gazunder?
What do you call it?
Gazunder. It goes under.
Never heard of it.
Is that one good enough? There you go. I think it'll be fine. It's pretty robust, this slab.
Beautiful. Paint scraper.
Okay. So anyway, it's looking pretty halfway decent at the moment. It's starting to cook through there, so we might crank it up and cook it through the underside. Another good thing about cooking this way first is when you cook up from the underside, the juices tend to not run out the bottom of the fish because the skin and the scales are sort of an impermeable layer. So if you cook it this way, then it should theoretically be a little bit more juicy, but with the bones I don't think we're going to have a problem. I might crank that up a bit.
When did you shoot this fish?
What day is it? I shot it on Monday before dawn. I shot it at, what time was low tide? I think I shot it about 10:45 in the morning after Timothy shot one about 3 hours before.
Oh wow. So pretty bad, dirty inshore water this time of year. How did you guys manage to get your timing right while you were here?
Lots of exploration over the years and knowing what sort of timing and
How much time did you guys put into learning about barra and how to hunt them and actually shot when the water's clean enough?
well, I think over about how many trips have I done? I think I've done like 40 or 50 trips looking for barra.
Wow.
And just,
And how many like success rate?
I think I've shot over 100, so probably decent. Well, some of that's like long trips, like multiple days and that sort of stuff. But if you shoot, you shoot one, you shoot two. You can shoot 5 legally, but I mean, there's a lot of fillet thing to do at the end of that.
Biggest one?
14 or 15 kilos.
Okay. How big was this fish?
13 and a half. 105 centimetres. But interestingly, Tim's was 108 centimetres and his was about 100 grams lighter than mine.
Okay.
So,
So shallow water?
6 metres.
Yeah, nice.
6 metres, maybe like 4 metres visibility.
So
yeah.
private conversations after for marks and locations?
Just gotta go looking, gotta put in the time. I think Trevor's put in a lot of time in his over the years and had some success. Also just, like knowing, not going to a spot and having it fail, saying why was the visibility dirty, what can I do different weather conditions. Also this year there's been lots of floods, so it's pushed a lot of those fish out into the salt water a bit more than the upper reaches, and it hasn't rained for a long time at the moment, so you start putting these things together. And I think 2012 there was the big floods then, and a Wonga Dam at Gladstone spilled over 100,000 barramundi, and 2012-2013 was just turbo for barra. You see big schools of them, so
cool.
Yeah.
Should we get into this carpaccio?
Carpaccio, yeah, sure. I'm just going to get the rest of the pin bones out of this thing here, but we can get the carpaccio. Did I see some forks somewhere?
No.
On the barramundi note about how many times I've been there, we actually have a mark that we call greenhouse because we're convinced that the amount of times we've gone there, we just burn fuel and it adds to the greenhouse emissions because I've been there 20 times and we had to dive about 3 times. So we have a spot that we call greenhouse because it's a long way from anywhere, but if you get it good, it is good. So just be prepared to do a lot of miles, spend a lot of money on fuel, and
But the adventure's worth it. I think one thing I got out of your YouTube channel, even though you made a transition in the UK, where the water's obviously a lot dirtier, you guys get fewer species, and you've still...
It gets clean sometimes, you get 3 metres viz some days.
But you managed to keep the stoke and the joy, and you tell a really good story, and you share your fails as much as anyone, which I really enjoy.
I think everybody has them, so that's why it's kind of relatable. I've been having a little bit of a fail finding all the pin bones on this. That feels pretty decent.
Are we going to use the same rub and barbecue that as well?
Why not? I mean, grassy emperor are a very, very delicate sort of flavour, along with the red throat emperors. They're really nice to eat, so you probably don't need. You could just actually. I did have a plan for this one.
Okay.
I was just going to do some classic sort of Mediterranean thing that they do there is just olive oil, lemon juice, oregano over the top, and that's kind of just their all-purpose dressing for aubergines, courgettes, peppers, fish, the works. I guess as they say, it grows together, goes together, so that's what they do. But that there is a finished, I think that's called a reverse butterflied fish, but that's a lot less wastage compared to filleting a fish that you're going to have. So maybe hitting the green this way or something like that. any sort of fish that's small. Makes it pretty easy. Looks a bit funky, but yeah, something different. If you've got time, if you've got kids, you probably don't have time to do all that, as I've found out seeing my nieces and nephews over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, if you've got time, why not?
You like to oven bake it or steam it, is that right?
I normally oven bake that. I just stick it on the tray, olive oil, and then you put the grill on the top, like you're making a toasted salmon or something like that, and you'll see the skin start bubbling up and crisping up, and it looks like bunions, but it tastes good.
So what are we going to do now with it?
Do we have an oven?
No.
Okay. Well, we're going to do a barbecue with it. So yeah, I think we'll try the barbecue. We're not going to get that sort of crispy on the top hot element going to it. This is looking pretty decent.
Telling if the fish is done or not.
Telling if the fish is
It's
done.
very inaccurate science as far as I'm concerned. Like with American barbecue now, everyone's got a meat thermometer. Have you ever used them on fish?
A meter?
Meat thermometer?
Brand's called a meter.
Oh,
It is the gen. I do have one, but I've never used it for fish.
okay.
I don't know, generally for seeing if the fish is done, a fork is generally a good way, because if it has resistance, it feels like the fish is raw. And yeah, that's generally what I do. So to check this, you could just, there's quite a slab there, but you can see that.
Still a little bit raw in the middle.
No, it's getting there. It's just being juicy. I mean, you can probably eat that. I don't think that's far off. Look at that.
Okay.
What do you think? It's not that raw.
It looks good. Yeah. Let's pull it off. We'll keep going for another couple of minutes.
I think just maybe the stick part might be a bit more done. Maybe a little bit more. But anyway,
we're still going to do something with that, yeah?
we're going to do something like that, yeah. Do we have another thing to rest it on? Like a plate or something? Where do we go? So, this thing and other bits, oregano, pretty easy to find.
So these edibles, are they pretty common in people's gardens?
My dad has an immense garden with all sorts of things growing in it, so he just, yeah, I don't know. It's called a dianthus.
Yeah.
Dianthus? Something like that? I don't know. Apparently they're edible. We'll find out. I trust that. So yeah, just chop up a bit of this sort of gear. As usual, salt and pepper onto the fish. Because we can't crisp up the skin, it might be a bit difficult to get off the barbecue, but we'll make it work. So try and attempt to crisp the skin. You can get salt on it. Salt's always a great dehydrator if you're ever doing crispy skin stuff. So even if you just scale the fish and you want to get crispy skin, if you put salt on the top, stick it in the fridge. Fridges dehydrate things really well. Stick it skin side up. That'll get the skin even more dehydrated. So if you want to get a crispy skin, you need to remove moisture, because moisture is the enemy of crispiness. So yeah, always throw a bit of salt on. And on the other side, salt, because it makes everything taste better. And then chopped oregano over the top. Barbecues tend to cook the crap out of this sort of stuff, so you can't really go too much. And then we can take this off so we get the tray clean. So?
Just my tech skills as usual, Amy, which is something.
Right, that's very warm.
I'm going to move this.
Okay, that's good. Let that rest, that'll be fine. Just so you can wipe this barbecue. It's got blood on it.
As you can tell, guys, we run live cooking classes every week.
Oh, big time.
So we're very professional. It's a
Seamless operation.
And we're making...
Lots of headway. It'll happen.
We're doing a really good job. Let's pat ourselves on the back.
So normally I'd mix this together with the olive oil to give an emulsion, but we don't have that luxury. So we'll just give it some of these ones.
How do you mix it? Do you add anything else? What ratio?
Just a splash and a splash.
A splash.
Till it mixes.
Typical Spearo ingredients. You can imagine putting together the book with 158 recipes.
It's like you have an entire email and a meeting about working about unified quantities. Are we going American? Are we going not American? So anyway, super simple, just like that. I'll put that face down. It's probably going to stick, but And it doesn't take a long time to cook because it's so thin, as opposed to doing a whole fish that you got to bake the whole fish. It's this thick, but this is going to cook twice as fast. So we'll crank it up and try and get it hot, because when you've got a thin piece like this, if you want to get it crispy, if you're going for the lid on for a long time to get it crispy, it's going to be cooked through. So I tend to bring up the heat a bit when it's a thinner fish like this.
What are you sort of thinking? 2-3 minutes?
I just feel it. You just get a feel or a vibe for it.
While we're waiting on that, are we going to feed
Yes.
people? Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to give it a go first?
Okay. Why not? I've got some forks here. Thanks, Craig.
Good to the max.
You go, buddy. I've got your own big piece first.
Sure.
So this is mystery fish, yeah?
Well, I know what it is, but yeah, it's fine.
But I don't.
You don't. Oops.
It's good.
Try this one. Which do you prefer?
This is more flavoursome, eh?
Is it? Okay, right. It's certainly not bad, the other one though, is it? It's not inedible in any way.
No. Should we get some volunteers and get them to guess what species?
Yeah, if anyone wants to have a go and see what's what.
Yeah. Come on up, brother. Help yourself to the fork, and then
That's one, so...
you have to leave your guess after you've had it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just get a fork full of it, get all the flour bits in it. One is I can't do that as a tip. One's normally rated as a fish that would get a lot of people saying, "Oh, what did you shoot that for?" And one of them is that's what we're targeting today because it's the best fish in the world.
Coral trout. This man says coral trout. Which one coral trout?
Mullet. If
All right.
only I was so lucky to find some mullet on this tour.
All right. Good guesses, gents.
Does it taste any good? That's the other thing. So,
For everyone that's had some and those that haven't, what two species did we have?
the right-hand side was
Sorry, no, let's just say confusion. This side here,
the one that people least preferred.
yeah,
That was the golden trevally.
golden trevally. Two people found that, they liked that. And then on this side,
Spanish mackerel.
Spanish mackerel. So,
But generally, golden trevallies, if someone puts one in a boat, no one's ever really impressed. And that was actually a 12-kilo golden trevally, so, you know, people saying, oh, you can't eat them, they're inedible, and that sort of stuff. It's just, maybe it's the way you're cooking it, or...
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it tastes great, it tastes fine. The silver trevallies, the little ones I prefer, they're a bit more delicate, but it's still very edible for people out there that, are worried about social media, people saying, oh, you showed us golden trevally, what are you doing, and that sort of thing. Because that happens a lot. I've very much changed my mind. I'm no shame admitting that I used to be very much, if it's not a mangrove jack, a tuskfish or a coral trout or a parrotfish, I'm not interested in eating it. But very much changed my tune.
now there's no such thing as a bad fish, just a
There
bad cook.
Generally speaking, yes. Some fish are a little more difficult to make taste good.
Yeah. This
But
one,
before this one
one's
goes.
going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult to flip because it has no bones in it, so it's kind of falling apart. That is what happens with the whole fish. But
I'd say we're about 30 seconds off eating it.
yeah, I might just turn the plate off and eat it off the plate. It's probably a bit easy because you don't have to serve anything. That's it. If you do it in an oven, it sticks together a little bit easier. You can take it off the tray in one go. But would you like to get stuck into the barramundi to see what you think of that?
Okay. And then I think we might go to everyone here to see if they've got some questions for
Totally. Fire away.
Dan Mann or the Noob Spearo.
Do you want?
I'm just going to rip a bit
As soon as
out.
you think it's really fine. Is it hot?
This is a little bit hot.
Have you ever had a wild saltwater barramundi?
Oh, it's good.
So that's a meal that's going to feed maybe 6 or 8 adults at a barbecue that generally gets thrown away. Same thing with kingfish as well. Kingfish collars are really nice. The belly flap tends to have a lot of fat on it, really nice. So yeah, it's just one thing that I would say if you've got the opportunity, give it a go.
I mean, what everyone up to?
Fill your hooks, go for it, yeah. You can do whatever you want, yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Oh, I wanted a shot before we start a little bit weak.
Also, on the barramundi front, a lot of people get a bit funny saying I don't like barramundi because I've eaten it at restaurants and it's crap, but they're one of those magical fish that lives in salt water and fresh water. So most of the stuff that you get at a restaurant that's Australian grown, it's always going to be in a freshwater pond that's fed pellets or whatever, and they're just a completely different animal as far as I'm concerned. And you can even you can see when you some of those ones that came out of the dams in 2012 and 2013, you get one and you cut it open and the meat's grey and disgusting. But when you get a saltwater one that's been out in the salt for a while, they're beautiful. It's like a light pink colour, really nice fish to eat.
Yeah, come up, help yourselves, guys. And what do you think of that spice rub? Not bad.
If anyone wants to get like super,
If anyone wants to try that,
just you can rip
spice
off.
rub, conky out yours.
There you go. You rip off. That's for you. There's like your sort of Kentucky Fried Barra or a wing.
And we used to throw these away.
With all the barra you shot, you threw them all away.
I've never shot a barra.
But yeah, fish wings, it's a great way to maximise your catch.
Lovely.
And then this part here, it's like a fish chippy.
Are we going to see a video on Danny Man YouTube channel, the barra hunting?
Got a couple of videos, but yeah, maybe a more recent one, yeah, sure.
Okay.
It'll be coming in 6 months' time when I get through my backlog of videos.
How much footage have we got when you've been on holiday?
Filled up a 4 terabyte drive. So a bit.
Wow. And highlight of the trip?
Shooting at Dentex.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
I shot my first one in Spain.
I think I saw that.
That was a big highlight because I tried to shoot one for so many years and really not done well enough. Oh, you're not eating my chicken.
What's the chicken?
Eat that. Eat the wing, like eat that. Bite on that.
Really?
Yes. There you go. You'll know when you've gone too far because it's really hard to eat. Do some paper towel.
That was excellent.
That's probably the highlight of the trip. I shot a few more in Greece, which is also good to get one in the Mediterranean. But, then if anyone else wants to try the grassy, shouldn't be too many bones to pop.
Guys can come back up. There's the grass is just being served as well now, so come back up and try that as well if you like.
Normally it looks a lot more impressive. It's all whole in one piece with the skin side up. It's all blistered, but barbecues are not the best thing, so we can try and deconstructed grassy. Yeah, we'll call it that. That's the wrong side, isn't it? There you go. There's the head. Also with that, if you've got a wok that's big enough, you can just dunk that whole thing in and deep fry the whole thing. That will ensure you keep it together, which is good.
This is going to be a very different Noob Spearo podcast episode.
Yeah,
a lot of eating.
Very visual. Very visual. So yeah,
I can't say I've done a lot of live cooking before.
I've not done live cooking before either, as you can tell.
You've done remarkably well, Dan. Everyone's eating the fish and enjoying it, so can't ask for more than
If
that.
anyone wants to, I do it.
It's a massive pleasure experience in it and serving the food for other people to enjoy.
Also, watch out for bones.
The best,
They're not
the best
perfect. As my granddad said, if there's bones, they grew thereafter I filleted it. Yeah.
Yes.
Favourite fish to spear versus your favourite fish to
Get rid of this thing.
Tony Robbins has left the building, folks. We've just got Daniel Mann left now.
That was aggressive.
Favourite fish to spear. What about you? Favourite fish to spear depends where I am, but I guess around Brisbane, I would say snapper, just because they're fun to hunt. You actually have to hunt them, which is good. As I'm finding out, when you go other places where there's not so many fish and you return to your home waters, you realise how spoiled you are in Australia with the number of fish, so many fish, and the lack of intelligence in a lot of those fish. But snapper, they can be quite wily, so I really like shooting those. I really like eating them as well, but if I was on the electric chair and I had to have a fish meal for my last meal, I would probably eat... That's a tough one. Big ones get tough, I find. I think a big shoulder off a red emperor is probably a great one to eat. They're just, the bigger they are, the better they taste, in my experience. They're just awesome looking fish. You can't really stuff up the cooking. Yeah, they're probably one of the best fish I've ever eaten, I would say, red emperor. Or a largemouth nanagar, but I haven't shot too many big ones. So, yeah. But snapper, they're fun to shoot. Red emperor, they're fun to find, but once you find them, they're pretty much dead because they're not particularly smart. I just want to say thank you everyone for coming out tonight again. I know I said it at the start, but yeah, it's really cool to see so many people show up to watch me attempt to cook something. I hope you have learned something or inspired to try something else or just something a bit different and try and utilise more of the catch. If you want to get really inspired, shameless plug here, but 99 Spearo recipes, there's been a lot of work going on that in the background. I haven't been involved in recent months, but it's going to be a pretty epic book to add to the shelf and just give you some inspiration. I mean, most cookbooks, everyone picks their one or two favourite recipes out of it and doesn't try everything in it, but I think this one will be pretty special and you want to try a lot in it. So when that comes out, hopefully for a Christmas present, might come out. But anyway, thank you very much for your attention and your time tonight.
So go and subscribe to Daniel Mann if you guys haven't already. It's on YouTube. Or go to diveeverywhere.co. That's Dive Everywhere. Let's have a look. Dive Everywhere. Dan's very much about going all different places and cooking all manner of things. So check it out. Subscribe to him on YouTube again. All good. Thanks for coming tonight and let's finish off this fish and have a couple of beers.
Thank you.